I can't think of any reason why Fannie and Freddie shouldn't be private if and only if they are able to come up with the solvency to be able to satisfy that $190 billion outstanding debt they have. And so if they have the capacity to do that, then yes, that means that they're doing something right and things are moving back in the right place and they can go ahead and become IPOs again. But I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately.
They're now figuring out is linked to two big things. A lot of times people think, oh, dementia or Alzheimer's is an old person's disease, but it's not. It really isn't. And the two biggest things they're finding now is obviously chronic insulin resistance, which is like diabetes number 3. We're also talking about right now at this point, they did some kidney transplants or kidney replacements where we're on the verge within the next 10 years, maybe even 5 years, be able to get kidney transplants where you'll have zero rejection. So that's the kind of things that we should be investing resources in, investing infrastructure in, that I just don't know why our government officials don't look at that kind of stuff. Instead of holding on to age-old policy, why are we not looking at that type of stuff? What's your thoughts on that?
So what you talk about is just a real collision between capitalism and socialism, because what you're talking about right now is more of a socialistic policy, because if the government takes money from the taxpayers and then they redistribute it to R&D or research and development for the greater good of people, I think it's a good thing. And so that's why I think this whole conversation about capitalism versus socialism is the wrong conversation. Both of them working in conjunction with each other for the right reasons, for the right purposes, make good sense. Yes. So let's talk about Alzheimer's.
Before you make that point, the only fundamental difference is that the government should own nothing.
Correct. 100%.
And the premise of a socialistic operation is that the state controls the assets.
Yes, it's just a distribution system, not an ownership system. Most people are conditioned, especially Gen Xers and older, are conditioned to believe that what the doctor says is law. And so we blindly listen to the doctor and do what they say because they're the experts, and we just are conditioned to agree with them. If you look at me, you can't tell with my lifestyle, and because I'm not looking to acquire more asset, I'm not a consumer, I'm an investor. And so so that's really my philosophy.
And that's a general mindset right there, Len. Everybody could take away from that, whether you're financially savvy or not, is learn how to become an investor rather than a consumer. Because ultimately you have to be okay with delayed gratification, and you got to be disciplined.
That's right.
Right. And if you could look at that and then go, okay, wait a minute, all I got to do is get a couple books on delayed gratification and discipline and read that and study that area of my life, spend 90 days putting signal on that, 100% signal on developing that core methodology, have a paradigm shift within yourself. And then ultimately you start looking and going, okay, cool. If I become an investor rather than consumer, in 10 years, I can consume whatever the hell I want with all bravado and with no limitations. And I can have 100% without any provocation of what I want to buy. So, but understanding understanding the mastering the human element of delayed gratification and self-discipline, that's where you ultimately have to cure yourself, because
yes,
we're all victims of being told we have to buy as much.
That's right.
Forced us all to buy a house. Everybody got to buy a house.
They mentally manipulate us into that. And so if you're listening to this and you're listening to Chris and saying, okay, well, it's easy for you to say because you have money to invest and I don't. Well, go and take a look at your house. And when I say your house, I'm talking figuratively. So how much income are you earning and how much of that are you spending? And what of that expense column can you reduce drastically or eliminate? Because the only way that you're going to make it out of this rat race is either increase your income or decrease your expenses. And the best option would be to do both at the same time. So if you are making what you spend, you're not going to have the ability to do any of the stuff we're talking about, because most people out there, when you make more, you spend more because you want to show everybody else how much of a baller you are. And really at the end of the day, if you look like you're rich, but your bank account says nothing, you're broke.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Which, if you want to say anything, I was going to talk about Fannie and Freddie.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that, because I was getting ready to open up another can of worms, man. That would have led to another 15 minutes. So yes, let's talk about Fannie and Freddie.
So here's a good thing right here that I think is that solves a lot of problems. Okay. And Trump, this is a big move that Trump's wanting to do. And this has been being floated around for a while. And we all know the disaster that it is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the bailouts and all this stuff. But there's a bid on the table with possibly doing an IPO structure to privatize Fannie and Freddie Mac. What are your thoughts on that? On changing that? Because it just seems like it's going to be, again, get rid of the government, make it more private. What's your thoughts on that? You think it's going to happen?
Okay, so I'm going to go into teacher mode for a second. And I think that it's not a good or a bad thing. And here's the reason why. Here's my teacher hat. Okay, so what is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? In layman's terms, what they are, they're big entities that allow people to take out loans on their homes. And so back in 2008, the government decided that Fannie and Freddie was too big to fail. So they put it under what's called conservatorship. And what conservatorship means is that the government, overseeing Fannie and Freddie, they control what they do in their day-to-day operations. So as a part of that takeover, Fannie and Freddie had these preferred stocks. And right now there's $190 billion that the Treasury still holds. And so why was Fannie and Freddie important? Because what it does is it frees up banks to be able to issue out other loans, because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buys those loans from the bank. Okay, so since Fannie and Freddie is looking at becoming private, the problem is that they still have $190 billion shortfall. Why is that? Because in order for them to go IPO again, they've got to satisfy those outstanding shares that the Treasury still owns. And so unless they can come up with $190 billion to buy back those preferred shares, they're going to stay under conservatorship for a while. Now, let's go back to your original question, having put down the foundation of what all of this is. Your question is it a good thing for Fannie and Freddie to be private? I would say, as a general answer, it is always better to have privately run entities as opposed to government run entities, because I can't think of one instance in which a government run entity compared to a privately run entity was actually better. I don't know of any. If you know of any, Chris, please enlighten me. I think you'd be hard pressed to find that. And so as a general rule of thumb,
I have one that's close.
Okay. I'm interested to hear that. I can't think of any reason why Fannie and Freddie shouldn't be private, if and only if they are able to come up with the solvency to be able to satisfy that $190 billion outstanding debt they have. And so if they have the capacity to do that, then yes, that means that they're doing something right and things are moving back in the right place, and they can go ahead and become IPOs again. But I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. I think they're too far under.
Reminiscent. It's kind of reminiscent of like I mean, it's maybe not so much, but like when England was in super big debt, and they just started started selling like almost like over collateralized debt. They packaged the war debt in the form of government bond and stuff like that in the returns, and created privatized companies that way. It's kind of almost along the same thing. And I bet you if they put that out there, there'd be such a massive hungry market for that. I would buy it. I would buy it. I'd ride that 30 to 60 day cycle right there because I think it's a great thing. I think it needs to be privatized, and I think we're heading in the right direction. But again, that's if you look at that and you see that type of policy, that's the kind of thinking that we need. That's the kind of thinking that Trump is thinking. Now, again, that goes back to what I said earlier. That's a wave for a certain group of people. If that happens, that's a wave. That's a windfall for a certain group of people, right? Mm-hmm. Most people won't be able to take advantage of that. If it does happen, the biggest advantage for, like you said, the masses is that maybe a few years from now, you're going to get a more competitive, easier home loan.
Get an FHA for 3%, hopefully at a reasonable interest rate.
Exactly. But right now, the wave is someone's going to make $10, $20 million off of that if it does that. And that's really what it is, because the world works that way in capitalism. There are those who are positioned and have an appetite for that type of product and that type of opportunity that will take that risk, invest in that opportunity, and create more productive value. And that's why those types of opportunities need to be created, because there are always going to be majority of people, 80% of people, 90% of people that are never going to want to even think about that. But then there are that 10%. They're going to want to look at that and go, hey, I want to take advantage of that. I want to take the risk. I want to do that. And then as a result of them doing that, they get the reaps of the rewards for that. And what always ends up happening is the people that didn't take advantage, they go, oh my God, that's crony capitalism. Look how rich they got. No, they took the risk to take advantage of that.
Okay.
Like, for example,
let me jump in really quick, Chris, because you talked about Fannie and Freddie and Trump's belief in the free market as a way to say, look, let's allow Fannie and Freddie to become private. The problem that I don't have an issue with that. The issue that I have, because you brought Trump into the conversation, is that I have not seen any policies enacted that benefits the masses of people. I've seen many, many policies that have been enacted that the rich get to take advantage of. And so when you're a president, if you're a CEO of a company, of a privately held company, you do what you're supposed to do to enhance the wealth of your equity holders and your shareholders, right? But as a president, that's not your role. You can't operate as a CEO to maximize profit for the highest income earning individuals already. And so that's the fundamental issue that I have with him, is that you can't be a president who operates as a CEO. You have to change your philosophy and approach in areas. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do things to benefit the wealthy. That's fine. But you also have to have policies that benefit the people that don't have the safety net. Because one thing that you talk about, Chris, and as an individual, I fundamentally agree. Let me pre-frame it. Like, you talk about the importance of not being a victim. You talk about the importance of taking personal responsibility. You talk about the importance of working hard. And I know this is a bit of a segue, but it all ties in. There are segments of our population that don't have the wherewithal because of some mental limitations or physical limitations. And then you have another segment that don't have the right mindset. And so where you and I agree is that there are large numbers of people who don't have the right mindset to go after their goals and their dreams. And they have the mental ability, they have the physical capacity, but yet they choose to make poor choices. Okay. We can talk about how to address that. That's a problem. And I agree with that. But as a president, you have a responsibility to understand that there are certain people who are going to take drugs, even though it's not a good decision. So have a policy like some states do that, no, okay, if you're going to go have unprotected sex and have an STD, be able to go to a place to get rubbers. If you're going to have drug use, instead of using dangerous needles, have a place to go get clean needles. Now, remember, I fundamentally and wholeheartedly disagree with that type of behavior as a Christian. But I also understand as a pragmatic thinker that there are people who are going to do things that that cause more harm than good. So you've got to step outside of what you believe as an individual, because you're not just leading yourself and your household, you're leading a nation. So Fannie and Freddie, great idea, but there's other policies that he's not enacting that helps large numbers of people who don't have the same capacity to take care of themselves financially like you and I do.
Absolutely. I agree. And a lot of that, I think, falls back down to legislative branch. How are they going to lay down more policy? Because he is restricted to that.
Sure.
So I think it's a great thing. I think it should happen. I think they should put more time and resources into Congress should be thinking about that, on how to make that happen rather than the infighting. But I think the biggest thing that people can do as they take away from this and looking at all this, just to cut the noise and the nuance of all of it is, and this is just for me and what I've done, and I know there's a lot of other people that think that way because you're one of them, is prevention and actually going out there and figuring out how to take care of yourself and figuring out how to maximize yourself so that you're good. And there's this thing that just came out. We're reading it, and we talk a lot about dementia. We talk a lot about, you live in that space every day, so you see what that is. But there's a lot of dementia breakthroughs. There's a lot of stuff happening with health and relates to that, and just general overall things you can do. And it's interesting because a lot of dementia they're now figuring out is linked to two big things. A lot of times people think, dementia or Alzheimer's is an old person's disease, but it's not. It really isn't. And the two biggest things they're finding now is obviously chronic insulin
resistance,
which is like diabetes number 3. But the connection between, they can actually reverse a lot of this. Is what happens is the degradation between your brain function and your physical body being able to communicate with each other. And there's a test, or there's this exercise, and basically what happens is if you have dementia or you're in that, you could test yourself. They're doing these studies now, and these exercises where if you stand on, like, for example, you're just standing up straight and then you close your eyes and then you just lift your leg up, one of those legs, you should be able to stand and balance on that leg with your eyes closed. And you'll notice it becomes a challenge, but you should be able to do it for at least 20 seconds. And that will signify that there's a good brain-body connection. Your brain is functioning correctly and knows spatial awareness without using ocular vision, right? Mm-hmm. What happens is they notice that when they try to do that with dementia patients, they can't do it at all. But then when you start retraining that way and reducing the sugar levels, you could actually reverse the effects of dementia, which is pretty amazing to see that, because up until then it's just been pharmaceutical therapeutics that have been out there. But we're also talking about right now at this point, they did some kidney transplants or kidney replacements where we're on the verge within the next 10 years, maybe even 5 years, of be able to get kidney transplants where you'll have zero rejection. So that's the kind of things that we should be investing resources in, investing infrastructure in, that I just don't know why our government officials don't look at that kind of stuff. Instead of holding on to age-old policy, why are we not looking at that type of stuff? What's your thoughts on that?
So what you talk about is just a real collision between capitalism and socialism, because what you're talking about right now is more of a socialistic policy, because if the government takes money from the taxpayers and then they redistribute it to R&D or research and development for the greater good of people, I think it's a good thing. And so that's why I think this whole conversation about capitalism versus socialism is the wrong conversation. Both of them working in conjunction with each other for the right reasons, for the right purposes, make good sense. Yes. So let's talk about Alzheimer's.
Before you make that point, the only fundamental difference is that the government should own nothing.
Correct. 100%.
And the premise of a socialistic operation is that the state controls the assets.
Yes, it's just a distribution system, not an ownership system. And go ahead.
What I think if the country is going to be capitalistic is, and some will argue with this, but I think this is cool. We all have resources. We're all going to pay some taxes to the government. Cool. Can we reinvest that into R&D to make all of our lives? Because that is the process, Len, that then solves what you want to solve, which is better lives for those who don't think like you and I think. See, that makes people like me who want to go out and work 16, 18 hours a day, that makes me want to submit that check to the government, because I know the government's going to reduce my costs on the back end, because they're creating opportunities to lighten the burden eventually. But that's just not the process of the thinking that we see, because ultimately, whenever organized government gets more organized, it ultimately has to go down the communist socialism path, because we can't fight that. That's no matter what the evolution of what it does. But at any rate, and I just wanted to tie that in real quick, because I agree with you on that. I'm like fully about that.
Yeah, that's an important point. And as you talk about research and development, for those in the audience that are really concerned about their aging parents, I want to talk to you about a blood test that Chris was referring to when he was talking about Alzheimer's and dementia. So there's this blood test, and it measures a genetic code called APOE. I won't give the long definition of it, APOE. And there's 3 different genetic markers. So you have APOE2, APOE3, and APOE4. And essentially, in layman's terms, APOE is a genetic code in your body that's assigned to you at birth that has the ability to remove the fats effectively that cause insulin resistance. So APOE2 markers do that efficiently. 3 does it somewhat efficiently, and 4 is not efficient at it at all. So what happens is that we get one of those 3 markers from each of our parents. So our mom will give us APOE 2, 3, or 4. Our dad will give us 2, 3, or 4. If both parents give us number 4, which is the inefficient way of moving those fats, we have a 12 times higher likelihood of getting Alzheimer's. And so you wouldn't be able to stand on one foot, with your eyes closed, because that brain body connection is gone. So if this blood test is not ready yet, it's not on the market yet, but it's very promising, because what this means in my world is that if you start to see, just as a preventative way, have your parents, once they turn 50, 45, 50, get this blood test. And if they have 2 genetic markers, then you can start the preventative things, like making sure that their diet is good, making sure, because genetics is not it's not a predetermining factor, because lifestyle kicks in as well. And so if they have both markers, APOE4 from mom and from dad, then making sure that they exercise regularly, taking a walk, getting vitamin D from the sun, making sure that they're eating whole foods and not processed foods, making sure that they're lowering their body's natural tendency in that case to have more insulin resistance. And so tying the bow into the whole Alzheimer's thing is that research and development is so critical, but also having an effective lifestyle. So we've got to be preventative, because in most cases, what happens is I see it all the time in my world, is that parents that are experiencing Alzheimer's, dementia, or they're not able to do their activities of daily living, their children are forced to react and try to find effective care. But now they're limited in the number of decisions they can make, because they haven't planned for it. And so now they're just reacting to the first option. They're not looking at what's the benefit of going to a nursing home versus someone coming into the home versus going to an assisted living facility. All of them have benefits and drawbacks. And so going back to the whole research and development, the more you can learn up front, then you have a better ability to make informed decisions, because it's long-term and it's not reactionary. So
yeah, that to me is, and what's interesting about that study too, is what you're saying with the fat, how fat is related. Yeah. Oddly enough, that's the preferred fuel for your brain. Your brain wants fat.
That's right.
The preferred process, protein process, or preferred energy process in your brain is fat. So eating a high fat diet, or high healthy fats, like
healthy fats, correct.
Healthy fats, not omega 6s like seed oils. Interestingly enough, you know what grapeseed, right? That's a seed oil. You know where it came from, right? Grapeseed is a byproduct of making wine.
Mm.
So all these winemakers, we love all these grape seeds. And they say, what do we do with the grape seeds? It's a byproduct. They use it to make grapeseed oil. I mean, ingenious, right? So that to me is interesting that study links those processing of those fat proteins, because that would make sense, because that's what the brain uses for fuel.
That's
and
correct.
If there's an issue with how your body is processing fat, then at that point, it would make sense that you would have that genetic defect in that. And that's where I tie it back to affordable healthcare and our topic of conversation on that. That's where the resources ought to be going, because the resources just get spent down a non-ending, non-goal-oriented solution, which is, well, we're just going to treat the problem instead of putting the R&D work into preventing the issue from even being an issue. So, for example, if you are on affordable healthcare and you are getting that subsidy right now, this is a great legislation for Congress and the Senate to be thinking about. Instead of going, we got to save it, let's make it better. Okay, cool. We don't want to get rid of this. And this goes for Republicans and it goes for Democrats. Democrats just want to keep it. Republicans want to get rid of it. There's no pragmatic thinking there. So instead of going at, they go, okay, let's open the books on this affordable healthcare thing and let's sit here, put that crap live on TV and let me see those mofos sweating their asses off in the chamber, working for me like they're supposed to do. And instead looking and go, hey, you know what? Every person who's getting affordable healthcare, guess what? Because you're on affordable healthcare, you're getting holistic preventative screenings, genetic biomarker tests, instead of you go to the doctor. Because here's how it is right now. The doctor, you go to the doctor gives you a standard lipid panel test, you have high this, and there's the science behind that is completely outdated, and they give you a stat.
Yes. That's
instead of looking at it, and then they know, because they're like, oh, we're going to get this guy in 10 years because he's going to have Alzheimer's in 10 years. Let's make sure we keep him in the system. And that's the way it's working right now.
And lobbyists are the ones that continue to perpetuate that problem. And so lobbyists puts money into government officials' pockets.
And government facilitates it.
Exactly. They're all in bed with each other. That's the problem.
Depending on their sexual orientation, they're in bed. But outside of that, I can tell you for sure they're at the hunting lodge.
No doubt about it.
They're at Camp David. They're at Camp David. Oh, they're at Camp David.
Man,
No,
I was just going to say it's just a negative self-reinforcing spiral, because healthcare and pharmaceutical industry and lobbyists, they're all working to get into the government officials' ears, and they put money into their campaigns so they can continue to get reelected. And so until See, that's the problem. You have to find a different way to get rid of those special interest groups, at least in the way that they exist right now, because nothing is going to change about healthcare as long as you have powerful healthcare lobbyists in the pharmaceutical industry and in the healthcare industry that's staying in the pocketbooks of these politicians. And so until a fundamental shift happens, you're not going to change the philosophy of Western medicine like you talked about. Instead of being holistic, instead of taking a statin, giving them a written prescription to go down to their local pharmacy to go pump pills in their body so their kidneys and their livers continue to malfunction over time, nothing's going to change. And so it's going to take, again, a revolutionary act of change and a different philosophy to enact some of these changes that you and I are talking about.
You know what's interesting? It's such a crazy thing. And this is, again, goes to the preventative side of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of influencers now that you could follow. I follow one who's like, and he puts his numbers up there, right? His biostats. I want to say he's like, I'm 48. Okay. My testosterone is 847. I take no medicine. This is my numbers because I eat this and I do. That's what he does, right?
Okay.
And we sell a lot of life insurance, and I remember when we sell a lot of life insurance, Lynn, it was always, I'd say probably close to 50%. I'd say probably 4 out of 10 always had the terrible three I used to call them, the three twin sisters. You know what they were? Some type of cholesterol med, some type of blood pressure med, and some type of antidepressant or anxiety med.
Mm-hmm.
They all go together all the time. That's what doctors, you need an antidepressant, you need an anxiety med, and you need a cholesterol med, and you need a blood pressure med.
That's
and
right.
That's what just gets pumped out all day long. And it's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. And right?
Yeah.
But that right there is what the mindset of is just, can we do some R&D? And and here's what I mean by, again, going back to, that's why I think AI is one of those things that has the potential to change this, along with all these things violently.
I agree.
When I mean that violently, not physically,
quickly,
like
rapidly.
die,
yes.
Like turn it upside down, inside out, 360. Because think about it, AI has that potential to completely turn. Because when you look at it like that, and you really kind of expand what you and I just spoke about with healthcare and all this stuff, it's so convoluted and it's so entrenched with the way the system works right now. It'd be so impossible to change it, because changing it would create so much disruption, and people don't want to do that. So in order for you to have that type of disruption, you need an outside influence, whether you like it or not. And AI is that outside influence that could potentially completely, we could wake up 15 years from now, Len, which is completely reasonable, and go, Glenn, remember when healthcare used to be like that?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think AI would be the only way to create that revolutionary change. I'll give you a quick story. I was at the doctor, because every year I go to get my blood work done and to just, see how my body's progressed in the last year and all of that. And
I do every 90 days, by the way.
That's good. That's way better than me. So now I'm 5'10". I'm about around 170. I fluctuate between 170 and 175. When the doctor saw me, because whatever happened, my primary physician changed under the different program that we have, because it went from HealthNet to Optum. So anyway, he tells me, hey, I was taking a look at your cholesterol, and your cholesterol is a bit high. I'd like to give you a prescription. And I said, absolutely not. You're not giving me any prescription for cholesterol, because I'm in perfect health, brother. And my blood pressure says it, and my body tells me that I'm feeling well. I don't have any clogging of my arteries, because I had that all checked out. So you trying to give me this pharmacy, this drug to go take because I have elevated levels of cholesterol, just tells me you're in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. Why do I bring this story up? I bring it up because most people are conditioned, especially Gen Xers and older, are conditioned to believe that what the doctor says is law. And so we blindly listen to the doctor and do what they say because they're the experts, and we just are conditioned to agree with them. The only reason why I would say I decided not to is because my mind doesn't work that way. I'm not just the person to just listen and take what you say at face value. I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to do that. But I know that my mindset and my thinking isn't a reflection of most people in my age group or older. And so to your point about AI, I believe that AI is going to radically disrupt the medical industry, because I don't know if you know or not, but there's been some studies that have been done in some research that's shown that you had doctors diagnose a condition, and there was one person, I wish I had the specific study, that was misdiagnosed. And so what they did is they had a test where they had a certain set of conditions, and then they had AI diagnose versus world-class doctors, and AI got it right significantly more often and much more rapidly. And so as we become more sophisticated in our use of AI in the medical space, I believe that the whole need for second opinions and all of that stuff, that's going to become a thing of the past. You're going to have one AI that diagnoses. You're going to have another that confirms it or denies it. And that's it. And then we figure out what it is. You're not going to have years and years of people having these symptoms and wondering what it is. When I went to the doctor the last time, I have another doctor's appointment on Friday. I went to the doctor. Now, mind you, I've never had chicken pox. I went to the doctor and I told them what my condition was. Like, I felt this certain tingling sensation in my arm and in my chest area. And so they tried to give me a medication for for what's it when you have chicken pox, but it starts with an S. It's not oh my goodness.
Shingles.
Shingles. Yes. They tried to treat me for shingles. I've never had chicken pox. And the only way you can have shingles is if you have the virus associated with chicken pox. And so if that same conversation would have happened 10 years later, I believe AI would have said, oh, okay, this is what it is. It's nerves because the curvature of my neck is straight up and down as opposed to like a D shape. And so because of that, some of my nerves get pinched. And so it's a nerve issue, not a viral issue. But the doctor didn't figure that out.
Isn't that crazy? And see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And AI has the ability to do that universally, globally, amongst every industry.
Correct.
Everything. Mm-hmm. So the tip as you sit here, and because most people, oh my God, AI, and it's evil, and it's going to destroy the world, and all this stuff. And again, I don't know why, it's natural for humans to have a doomsday outlook,
sure.
Right? I mean, that's your natural human wiring.
Mm-hmm.
If you get anything out of it right now, go follow Kathy Wood. Right, ARK Investments. Go follow follow all of these people. And I'm not giving you investment advice right now, but look at what they're investing in and follow them and take 10% of your income every week, every month, every whatever. Go open it yourself, your own brokerage account, manage it yourself, and just follow what they do. And if you're like, I can't afford shares, go buy some options. And you could do it easily. And you could go build that wealth. And I guarantee you right now, if you will have a wave of multimillionaires over the next 5, 10, 15 years who are just taking small investments right now and investing in companies like NVIDIA, Palantir, Anthropic, Google, all of them, AIs, biotechs, anything around that. And I'm following that right now because, look, my thing here is that 60% of them are probably going to be losers.
Mm-hmm. But it's those 10% that'll overtake all those losers.
I'll take the 30% that did okay, and I want those 10% to go, hey, Len, we just made $10 million off of this investment, $2 million off this investment. I don't care what it is. You got to put in today's world, and this is just kind of the paranoia. I mean, this has been true for a long time for a lot of wealthy people. And a lot of people, but this is more true today for mainstream than it ever has been, is the only way you're going to survive. And I'm not saying the only way you're going to survive, but you got to learn how to make money work for you in the world of investing right now. You have to understand it because you can do it now. You don't need a stockbroker. Back in the 80s, it was reserved for,
correct.
Today anybody can be an investor. Now,
look at Webull, look at Robinhood, look at ways to
all of it, dude, all of it. You look, go online, and instead of watching the crap you should normally watch, go. And this is why it hit home so hard to me the other day. Go watch candlesticks and learn how to read trading patterns and learn how to read economic patterns. I know it sucks. I know it's boring, but you know what's crazy? I was in church on Sunday, this past Sunday, and preacher was talking about something. And he said. He brought up how he understands how to read investment candlesticks and day trading. And I went,
that's good.
Huh?
That's
because
good.
Here's the thing. If your pastor is talking about it, you ought to know about it. You ought to know and you ought to study it. Okay?
I agree.
You ought to know and you ought to study it. Just because that's the world we're living in.
No
today,
doubt.
guys.
No doubt, man.
That's the world we're living in right now. And, you gotta do that. So what are your thoughts, Len, on interest rates? Obviously the government shut down. We're not going to see changes on that, but that doesn't really affect. What are your thoughts on that? Money supply, small businesses, mortgage. Are you buying houses right now? Are you waiting? Are you keeping cash? Where are you at in regards to that right now? What's your thoughts as far as economy and making decisions right now, like making big purchases, buying houses, keeping cash? What are your thoughts on that in regards to everything that's happening right now?
It's a really good question. So for me,
you've been financially independent for a very long time, like very, very long time. Like, you don't mind if I share, like, it's been like what, 10, 20 years, like, that you've been financially independent? I mean, you've been financially independent for a long time. Have you crossed the 2-decade mark on that yet?
No, not yet. Right? I'm in the second decade. So, you're
in the second decade of being financially independent. That's pretty freaking good. And you're 54.
Correct. 53. 53. Not
Sorry,
until
I can't age
January.
you.
Yes, you
53.
do, man. Look at this face, man. That's not the face of a 54-year-old.
I'd say you're competing with me, and I'm 44, and I'd say we look like we're the same age.
I appreciate that. I don't agree with that, but I appreciate it, man. So you were asking me about just, small business versus homes and cash.
I mean, if you're a small business owner right now, you're not a small business owner right now, where you're getting ready to end the year. Are you buying anything? Are you buying houses? What are you looking at? How are you managing cash flows, loans? What's your thoughts on that? What are you doing?
So I would say for me in particular, again, Chris and I are not out to give financial advice because we are in completely different set of circumstances than you are. And so for me, cash is king right now. And the reason why I say that is because there's so much fluctuation with regard to the housing market. So there was the old guard that used real estate as a way to accumulate wealth. And that hasn't gone away. But when you look at real estate on average, it grows at about 6% a year. And so because of that, even though so people who have real estate, they like the idea of having a tangible asset, something they can look at, put their hands on, and, place renters there. They can buy and hold. They can fix and flip. And so those are very traditional paths to wealth. And so when you look at the interest rate fluctuations that are happening right now, to me, going into real estate and home ownership, if you're just going to just buy, like, for example, if I go in purely as an investor right now, I don't think it's a good time. If you are in a house and you
real estate respectively, right?
And real estate specifically, yes. If you're in a house and you decide that you want to move, keeping your original house and renting it out, if you can get as much as your mortgage was, because of the fact that right now the renters market is very hot. Why is that? A lot of people who want to move right now because maybe they're going to retire and relocate and they have enough cash and they have enough assets to be able to leverage those assets to acquire another property. Keep the property you're in right now because the interest rates on that mortgage tends to be between 0 and 3%. Whereas if you go and take a loan out right now, it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 8%, depending upon your credit score. So if you want to invest in a small way, keep your house that you're in, move into another one, rent that out, then you have some extra cash flow that's taking care of that asset. And you can always leverage that asset to get loans and things like that. So that's not what I'm doing right now, but what I'm doing right now is I'm hoarding cash. I want to keep the cash. So when it all really hits the fan, I'm buying assets at pennies on the dollar. And so I have a portion of my portfolio in gold and silver because that's a hedge against inflation. I have art as well as a hedge against inflation. But a large amount of my portfolio is in cash because I'm sitting on it. Plus, I'm also, in the process with business and everything like that. I want to make sure that I have enough cash flow on hand to manage that so I don't have to leverage as many assets. But for most people, I think if you're looking at other asset classes, new asset classes to get into, Chris touched on it. Look at the Palantirs of the world. Look at where AI technologies and biotechnologies is going and look at the trajectories of those companies. And what you want to do is find companies that have shown a track record of success. That's one way. But another way to look at it is what are the peripheral companies that interact with those companies? So for example, if you had a company that has a certain product, right? What are the raw materials that make up that product? Because if the product that's being produced in its final form needs these different raw materials, why not invest in those other companies? Because as those products continue to grow, those other companies that serve that company also grow as well. And so those are the things that I would be looking at. I would also be looking at different ETFs if I were you, exchange traded funds. Because why? Because you're never going to really beat the market, especially if you don't know. It's better to just have a passive investment strategy where a certain amount from your paycheck is going to these different investment portfolios that people that have already been representative of the market. Like you look at your spiders of the world. You just look at your, just any ETF. You just do your homework and your research. We're not giving specific investment advice, but those are the things that I'd be looking at if I were in this transition mode right now. But for me specifically, cash. I'm keeping cash, baby.
So you do the frisk before you take the risk, baby.
Absolutely. So that's why, if you look at me, you can't tell with my lifestyle, and because I'm not looking to acquire more asset. I'm not a consumer. I'm an investor. And so so that's really my philosophy.
And that's a general mindset right there, Len. Everybody could take away from that, whether you're financially savvy or not, is learn how to become an investor rather than a consumer. Because ultimately, you have to be okay with delayed gratification, and you got to be disciplined.
That's right.
Right. And if you could look at that and you go, okay, wait a minute, all I got to do is get a couple books on delayed gratification and discipline and read that and study that area of my life, spend 90 days putting signal on that, 100% signal on developing that core methodology, have a paradigm shift within yourself. And then ultimately you start looking and going, okay, cool. If I become an investor rather than consumer in 10 years, I can consume whatever the hell I want with all bravado and with no limitations. Mm-hmm. And I can have 100% without any provocation of what I want to buy. So, but understanding understanding the mastering the human element of delayed gratification and self-discipline, that's where you ultimately have to cure yourself, because
yes,
we're all victims of being told we have to buy as much.
That's right.
Forced us all to buy a house. Everybody got to buy a house.
They mentally manipulate us into that. And so if you're listening to this and you're listening to Chris and saying, okay, well, it's easy for you to say because you have money to invest and I don't. Well, go and take a look at your house. And when I say your house, I'm talking figuratively. So how much income are you earning and how much of that are you spending? And what of that expense column can you reduce drastically or eliminate? Because the only way that you're going to make it out of this rat race is either increase your income or decrease your expenses. And the best option would be to do both at the same time. So if you are making what you spend, you're not going to have the ability to do any of the stuff we're talking about, because most people out there, when you make more, you spend more because you want to show everybody else how much of a baller you are. And really at the end of the day, if you look like you're rich, but your bank account says nothing, you're broke. And if right now your income just allows you to make it just barely, well, are you willing to only have one car note instead of the two you have? Are you willing to go from that apartment that's in a downtown area to a suburb that pays $1,000 less in rent? Are you willing to drive a little less so you can have more money that you otherwise would be spending in gas to put somewhere else? Are you willing to stop drinking the Starbucks every day? Are you willing to stop going and buying all of these unnecessary foods and taking and reducing your spending bill by $200? So if you reduce your spending on food by $200, you reduce your gas by $50, and you reduce some other miscellaneous expenses by $50. Now you got an extra $300. You take that $300 and you put it into some type of an investment and do like Chris talked about, deferring gratification. Just imagine over time the compounding effect of that. And then as you start having the freedom to make more money, don't increase your lifestyle and invest more. That's really what it comes down to. Chris and I, we sacrificed a lot, and Chris and I was able to reduce our spending as our income increased. And that's what put us in a position to be where we are right now. There's no magic to it. With just a certain mindset that drives it.
It never stops, by the way. It never stops. This right here is my matcha for today, and I am an avid Starbucks ought to sponsor. Starbucks ought to hire me to be their spokesperson. Right? I Starbucks every day, $6.25 a day for a grande matcha. Right? I remember when it used to be $1.25, $2.75. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I go to Costco. And by the way, Starbucks is the McDonald's of coffee now. I mean, it's
for sure
quality. It's just terrible. And if you study, coffee in general, coffee is a very dirty product, right? And so is matcha. Matcha is a dirty product too. You got to be careful with the matcha because it can contain a lot of heavy metals because the way they cut it and pulverize it, right? Mm-hmm. So I go to Costco and I get the highest quality matcha there, right? Organic, non-GMO, high. If you could find coffee and stuff like that, you want to get it from grow ops, right? Because it's only coming from a certain amount of farms, so you have 100% traceability of where it comes from. Len, I went to Costco and bought the $22 bag of matcha. $22 is a lot of money for a bag of matcha, right?
Absolutely.
It was 3 months ago. I still have that bag. I'm still using it for my matcha every day, right? So I haven't spent my $6.25. So let me tell you, because it never stops, even at whatever level you're at. So $6.25 at 5 days a week is $31 a week. And that's how many weeks? 8, 9, 10, 12 weeks. That's $375.
Well,
in Starbucks. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Just imagine you take that and you reallocate that. And that's the point. Like this stuff that we're talking about, for most people, this is where you start to get glassy eyed and you turn away. This is the juice. This is the important conversation. And so it's oftentimes the boring conversations that are the most important conversations. When you're talking about health,
it is sexy.
No, not at all.
About this is sexy.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. But now you're in a position where you can afford Starbucks every day if you wanted to, because you were willing to risk and take sacrifices at the same time. And so those individuals that go to Starbucks because it's just a act of convenience, but they're still broke, you're not making informed decisions. You're just allowing life to take you wherever it takes you just for the look. And, Starbucks took a long time before they became popular, and now they're wildly successful. And hey, shout out to Starbucks for being great at business and taking a culture and putting people around it so they have inviting environments. I love Starbucks. And so I love their business model. I just think though, for the individual trying to make it, that may not be the best use of your money right now.
Yeah. And the thing is those are habits. That's a habit that serves you long into the future, because those habits are going to compound everywhere else. But the thing is I understand it's not a sexy and attractive topic, but the reality is that if you want to be sexy, you have to be unattractive for a little bit.
A long time.
All the boring crap. You have to do all the boring crap. And by the way, even when you do become sexy, you still have to continue to do the boring crap. It's like,
absolutely.
I mean, I've almost gotten myself up to, I know you're not a fan, but I mean, I'm trying to catch Pete Hegseth because he does 150 push-ups a day, like in the morning. And I'm not there yet, but I'm at like 80 right now before I collapse and die on the floor. So
that's progress,
I'm trying to catch
man.
him right now. Just in that simple task alone is such a game changer, because those are stupid, simple things you could do to help yourself, to create longevity in yourself, and to ward off having to deal with all the other stuff. And what's interesting is that when you start to really do that, you get excited about it because you can start to see results very, very quickly in the other end of it. What I mean by that is cutting little things out there like Starbucks every day and things like that. And having that money, like you said, cash is king. Going back to that point, for me, it's cash is king and cash flow is king, because I do believe 2026 and 2027, you are going to have some fire sales, and I want to be ready. I want to be ready for that market, and I want to be ready for the time to buy. And I just don't think the time is to buy anything right now. I really don't. I think right now is find very cool, high-end, innovative investments in the marketplace today, not the old crap. Have some investment allocation in the old stuff, because you need that, the blue chip stuff. not necessarily blue chip stock, but meaning legacy types of stuff.
Yes.
But you really got to be looking at the next, proven stuff, because that's your no matter what. But be really looking at the new baseline stuff, the new stuff that's going to set the new old guard for the next 100 years, looking at being an early adopter and an early investor in those, and then having cash to invest in more. Because I think there's going to be markets in real estate in 2026, 2027, where you're going to have a massive depression. Because if you do, let's say, open the interest rates right now, meaning you drop the interest rates right now and you allow that to happen, I think what's going to happen is you have a block, right, of a large block of homeowners and people that know how to use real estate and have bought real estate, and they're sitting at those low interest rates right now. And they've been sitting it for 2+ years. And what's going to end up happening is that those are the first people that are going to rush the market as soon as the interest rates come down, because they're not doing anything. They're exactly doing what you're doing. I'm holding. And then all of a sudden, once those rates flip and they've got a nice positive equity in that primary or that massive residence they got a low interest rate, those are the first people that are going to flood the market. And you're going to see a massive demand. And then all of a sudden the price points are going to go up pretty fast, because you're going to have that influx in the market. So it's not going to be quick, or not going to be slow, depending on the economic situation, but I think it's going to be fast. You're going to have a real quick entry into that, and it's going to light up. It's going to light up.
I agree.
And I don't know, the prices are probably going to go up fast again after that. Because you've got a glut right now, and builders don't want to build right now in those boom markets like Austin, and a lot of boom markets like in Austin, where you see 20% depreciation in some markets. You're going to see again that supply and demand issue, I think, anyways.
I agree.
Or you might just have a big enough appetite where there's just enough supply in the market. But homes are short, man. There's not a lot of homes for people, especially in California. And, we go from there. So anyways, at any rate, it's been an eventful day today.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
It's been pretty awesome. But if you like the content, if you like the what we've talked about, you like the discussion, we have many, many more. Like and subscribe. You know all that stuff. I'm going to try to promote that, but we wanted to continually do our best to get better and bring new content and to really just be raw. Because the thing is behind this, if you're listening, is we don't rehearse any of this. This is just us having an unfiltered, raw conversation about these topics based on the knowledge that we know. And we understand that we don't know all the facts and we don't know all the nuance. And you could probably look at this from a different perspective and add to it. But that's the point, is that we're just having a conversation about it, and we're having an intellectual dialogue about it without any discourse, meaning we don't really care. We just want to talk about it. So that's the thing to remember. And that's the principle to remember. And my encouragement to anybody who's listening is that if you have friends, you have family, you have colleagues, have a discussion. Be polite and have a discussion and stand firm on your viewpoint and your point. And you can see that as you watch this conversation. There are things that Len is very passionate about and he believes in. And he's not going to deter from them. No matter how many terms of endearment I give him to try to convince him and sway him, like how eloquent he is with his speech, that's not going to steer him from believing who he is, just like I have what I have. But that's the key in our power, is that we can come together and we know those things and we lend off of those successes. So try to practice that in your everyday life. Len, any closing thoughts before we apart?
Just continue to empower yourself with knowledge. Don't take the information that anybody gives you, not even us. Fact check everything so you can make your own informed decision about yourself, your family, the people you love. And ultimately, don't just think about yourself. Think about the value you bring to other people as well. And if we can do that, I think we'll start to go in the right direction as a country.
Absolutely. Have a great week, Len.
All right, you too.
Next time.
All right, have a good one. Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.